Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is a place where we reimagine the way we and the world work from the inside out. And we do that by bringing together wisdom, personal leadership, and well-being. My name is Arylo, and I am your host, and welcome to episode number 237. This is going to kick us off for the last season, or the last series in season 8. Can't even believe it's been 8 years that we've been here doing this podcast. If you are new, welcome. If you have been around for part of that time, it's good to have you here. And if you are been around since almost the very beginning, it's thanks for continuing to show up. As I was sitting and kind of tuning in myself of, okay, where are we right now in the atmosphere? What's going on in the world? And this is one of the things we do here at Feminine Power Time is this is a place for you to come to step out of the outside chatter, or what I like to call the banana world, and also to turn down the chatter on the inside and really get tuned in, tapped into what is true, what is real, what is right for you. And we have to do that by really illuminating a lot of the things we can't see because we're just, walking around in this banana world, and elevating and really looking at those and breaking through those. And it's feminine power time because most of us have been really entrained in either distorted feminine or overly masculine power. And so we don't really even understand where our power is, or we have been living in a fishbowl for so long where that power is external, right? Our value, our security, all of those things that this world has set up. The matrix is set up that way. So you could either, sit around for the rest of your life waiting for the matrix to disintegrate, or you could be like, you know what? I'm gonna elevate and liberate myself from the ways that are no longer serving me. And so that I can elevate into and be my most embodied, express, centered, connected self, so that you can be in the world, doing the work you want to do, having the impact you want to have, with the bigger world, but also with the people that you interact with every day and the projects that you lead and your part in the world. And also that we make sure that your longevity of well-being, y'all, is really, really, really cared for and nourished. Because if we don't have our well-being, body, mind, heart, and spirit, and it's all four of those. And I say that very specifically because it's so not evident in the mainstream culture. We hear body, mind, spirit, but the heart gets left out a lot, or we just focus a lot in like the overculture focuses a lot on just body, and now thank God the mind. But if you leave the heart and the spirit out, you're just going to continue to be not finding the meaning and the depth and the replenishment and all of the light, the radiance that we desire. So we need all four of those realms, what I call the realms of well-being. And so what we're going to do today, and we're going to do in this series, is we're going to really shine a light on what are called patterns. I'm calling this series the power to break through our patterns, the patterns that don't serve you, the patterns that maybe served you at one time, patterns that sabotage you, and patterns that frankly limit you. And what do I mean by patterns? Well, we'll talk about that. A lot of times you'll hear in kind of the mainstream dialogue, you'll say like, change your thoughts, change your beliefs, and then all will be well. Well, as if it was that simple, right? So if we come back to the four realms of well-being, it's body, mind, heart, and spirit. So you can't change your thoughts that live in your base level mind if you don't also work on the emotional realm and the spiritual realm and the physical realm, and not just your physical body, like the things that you learned in high school anatomy class, but your subtle body, the 10 bodies that in yogic wisdom they talk about. So there's a lot of pieces to all of that. And you're like, oh my God, Christine, wow, that's a lot. So this is my superpower. This is what I do for all of us. I have spent the last 20 years going deep in these wisdom traditions while applying all of my MBA, entrepreneur, social innovator, human consciousness work as well, and kind of bringing it all together in a way we can use it practically. That's my superpower. And so here's the thing on why we're diving deep on patterns now. So we all have, I like to think of patterns like imprints. And they're like these deeper imprints that are running within us, body, mind, heart, and spirit. And they're driving and all of us, not just you, but I'm going to speak to you specifically because, as we always like to say here, this is not just a podcast. I feel like this is you and I sitting down for a conversation. And it's like we're all, if we were like back, in 8th grade or something, or back in the days when they had telephones. Do y'all remember they had telephones that had little, cords on them that you had to put up to your ear? And we were all like, in our jammies, and we were, sitting, and we had like a big telephone tree, and we were all on the party line, and we're like on a party line here, but it's a wisdom party line. For those, the wisdom traditions like to say with eyes to hear, and I always say eyes to hear and ears to see, but I guess it's eyes to see and ears to hear, but I kind of like to flip it on its head. We're all tuning in here, and the inquiry and kind of that I want you to go into this with is like, what are the patterns, the imprints that are they're somatically in there, they're emotionally in there, they are in your base level mind, they're in our nervous system, they're ingrained in us through the overculture that think of culture like the water that we swim in. So it's the culture of your family, the culture of your company, the culture of society, and we don't even see the water because we're in the water. So how do you see those things? How do you see these invisible things? And when you start to work with patterns and imprints, what's so powerful about it is it helps you get to the root of what if I just pulled that root out instead of running around my garden, just pulling, cutting down all the weeds, if I could pull the roots of that thing out, then I could plant something new. And that's where we're all at right now in the collective, in transformation, as we evolve and elevate, is that this is the time to dig deep and like pull out those roots and then plant something new. But you can't plant something new. Like, if you try to plant something new, a new way of being, a new way of doing things, a new way of working, a new way of seeing or relating, but you don't pull out the weeds, especially if it's like blackberry or something that's invasive, it'll just take over and it'll kill the new plant. So this is the perfect time to be pausing every year. This is the great time. And whatever you're listening to this, it's fine, because there's never a time that it's not good to stop and look at our patterns. Is this time span between the March equinox and kind of the beginning of May. There's always when the Easters are and the equinoxes are. It's usually when what they would call, there's the eclipse season. And so whether you look at that through astronomy or you look at it through astrology, both sciences, just different, that is actually really happening. There's energy that we are being, it's not just like, oh, that's nice, look at the sky. There's an eclipse happening. There's energies that are happening that are affecting all of us in different ways. And this is what we call like more of a subtle science of understanding the subtle energy and the impact on us. So I always say with patterns and imprints, especially during this time between equinox and May 1st, if you're not consciously working with the patterns and the imprints that are running inside of you, that drive you unconsciously to run your thoughts, to give the perspectives to a situation, to be what is how you're looking at what's happening, it's running you. And usually not in the level of consciousness that you want to be operating in. So if you think about consciousness for a moment and your own consciousness, your consciousness hopefully is continuing to evolve and elevate, to shake off the kind of the barnacles of collective society, the barnacles of the patterning you got from your family, the barnacles of karma that you come in with that are the things that we're here to work our curriculum. And so we want to keep elevating our consciousness and thinking about consciousness as what you can see. And think of yourself 20 years ago in the consciousness that you lived at, the food you ate, the friends you had, the way you operated in the world. I bet it's different than the you today. And it's not just because you're older, although that's part of it, because you've got more years to kind of, get rid of the barnacles so that you can return to your natural self and really see the patterns as they come up instead of being run by them. But it's because your consciousness is elevating. So one of the things I love about patterns and what we're going to do in this series is, you can continue to talk about the same things that are happening to you And you can like sit in therapy for 20 years, talk therapy and just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And you'll never really raise and rise above it. And that's not to say that therapy is bad, because therapy is wonderful. And I believe that most of us need to have it at some point in our lives and in different points of our lives. It's that if you're still going and you're still talking about the same thing over and over and over again, it's like grooves that you're putting into a record. Or like if you notice you're talking about the same things with your friend again and again and again, but you're not seeing it any differently. You get stuck in these patterns and they get grooves within you. They're called samsaras in yoga. They're called neural pathways in brain science and Western science. And so how do you see them? Like, how do you get into them? And how do we like identify them? That's what the focus for today is. And then next week, we'll go into the next part of the series. We'll go into how do you break through them? How do you break through them? And then 3, what are some of the common ones that are affecting all of us kind of right now because of the collective time that we're in? And how can you start to see them and look at them? And I'll say one last piece before we kind of dive in. What we're going to do is kind of set the field today around, I wrote down, there's lots of different ways to see them, but I wrote 3 or 4 down that I want to shine the light on for you all today. But one of the things I want to say as we're going into this of like, well, why does this matter, Christine? Why do I want to listen to this series? Why do I care about patterns and imprints? I got important things to do. It's like the bane of my existence, but also I know what my part is to help educate. I didn't know this either till I knew it. And what I can tell you from my own experience is when you're able to give language, simple language, to see the pattern, you become empowered to actually work with it, to understand it, to see it in all the different parts of your life, to understand why it's triggering emotions within you that are uncomfortable, from anxiety to frustration. You start to see it at a spirit level and how it's part of your bigger soul's path, and how it's affecting your like buoyancy and your radiance and your passion in the world. You start to see how it takes root in your physical body and why there's symptoms that maybe have been plaguing your body for years and years and years and you can't shake them. You start to see the connections. This is why every year at this time we also do the 40-day burnout to balance practice, because this part of the practice is all about finding one major imprint that is a source of overgiving and under receiving. This is the first place we're going to look at. And when you can find that imprint and you can give it names and you see that pattern, then you start to see how it's showing up and affecting your mental thoughts, your emotions, your relationships, your overall feeling of safety and security and meaning, your soul path, and how it shows up in your body. And so that's the why, because you can't actually break through something unless you can give language to it. And that's why. And once you can give language to that pattern, now you can start to work it. I'll give you one example and then we'll dive into the first part of like, where can you start to look? But I want you to, as we're starting to kind of think about this, in the current Align Your Design Wisdom Council, which is a 7-month council for professional women who are in the process of figuring out what's next for them in their life cycle and their career and where they want to put their energy at. And these are women who are committed to being part of shifting the systems from the inside out. And so we're in like month 5, I think, right now. And so November, we had our retreat. And one of the things we left the retreat with each was, what is one of the main imprints and patterns that we're releasing, and what are we putting into its place? And we went through a process that got us all to the root, and we're working that. So mine right now is unease. And unease is a pattern that probably got imprinted into my system, I think, in like my 3rd trimester. I've done a lot of work with patterns and imprints, so I kind of know more than the average bear around this. And I've worked different systems on both on the therapy level, on the human consciousness level, on somatic levels, lots of different things to find this pattern of unease, and traced it all the way back to the 3rd trimester. And seeing how that has created a pattern of struggle for me, where I have to work hard to make things happen. Things don't come easy to me, or haven't in the past. And so there's this sense of struggle. Really, is the pattern, the root pattern that I'm working with, that I decided to work really consciously with in the 7-month container that we're doing on the Align Your Design. And I'm going to take it into the 40-day practice as well this summer. I always do the 40-day practice with everybody. And now I have a name for it. And then I'm like, okay, well then, so if that's the pattern on a struggle, how do I know it's showing up? Like, how do I know? What am I alerted to? So this is kind of what I'm kind of showcasing for you all, because if you can come out of the series with at least one pattern, and or you like join us for Burnout to Balance, please do. We start on April 14th this year. And you can work that for the rest of this year. You will transform, you will break through. And so I have that now. So once you have like what's at that center, which is kind of what you can be after over this series, and if you join us for the 40-day Burnout to Balance practice, you want to say, how does that show up? So one of the ways you start seeing a pattern is these are some of the signs. You're chasing. You're hoping it will just be different. Frustration. Resentment. Pushing. Struggle. Deep anxiety that keeps coming back. Failed relationships that have the same kind of pattern, similar situations that keep showing up. And so I wrote down some of these on a picture of this thing that says struggle on it. And I wrote down, chasing. And there were two other ones. Feeling like I'm frustrated and pushing. So now when those things show up, I'm like, oh, there's the pattern. There's the pattern. There's the struggle. And I'm replacing that with ease. So that's what I'm putting into place. So I'm releasing struggle. I'm embracing ease. Now, this isn't some spiritual bypass, hooty doody, woody woody, shoo doo baba. Well, this is like serious Jedi technology. So I'm working with that for the rest of this year. Maybe, hopefully, my whole year, it's called the year of ease. So I'm working this pattern consciously. And just last night, I had a call with a client that, triggered me, and I started to feel anxiety, and I started to feel wobbly, and my brain started to have these crazy thoughts, and I was like, God, thank God I have yoga. So I went and did my practice last night in community. This is also part of what we really need during these times, our practices, right? What are the practices that are holding you as you wobble with these deeper patterns and these deeper imprints? So I go to yoga, and I wish I could have said all of the anxiety was gone and the crazy thoughts were gone. They weren't. But what happened is I got home last night and I was gone this weekend. So I didn't even have anyone to talk to except for Sahaji. And she's lovely, my dog, my border collie. But, she can't talk. She gets good cuddles, but she can't speak. And I'm like, this is interesting, isn't it? That it's the eclipse this weekend and Noah's gone. And I have to sit with this. So where is it at in my body? What's my body feeling? What's my brain saying? What's my being responding to? And I was like, oh my God, here's the pattern. The pattern is I'm starting to feel some ease. I'm starting to feel things coming to me versus me having to chase them or go, as I say, kill the meat and make it happen. And that there was this bobble in the field because we're in Mercury in retrograde and because it's eclipse season and because of all of the things that are happening. It has nothing to do with me personally, but I know the energy that's happening. So I could pause and say, here's the pattern. What do I want to do with it? And so I put on my high frequency music, I turned the lights off, and I meditated and fell asleep. Woke up this morning, it was better, still there, but then I had my practice, my moon cycle, my manifesting practice, where I followed the moon cycles as a way to create a rhythm. And so I could sit down with my journal. That was a practice. I did my pranayama. That was a practice. I went for a walk with Sahaji. That was a practice. And then I have my councils today. 2 of them. So I connected with women who are conscious, community, another practice. So I'm sharing that and taking the space in this session with you all today because this is how the practices are connected to the patterns. And why I spend so much time talking about practices, because if you don't have the practices or the awareness to see the pattern, it's just happening to you. And you don't know, you're just frustrated, you're anxious, you're chasing, you're hoping, and you're like, frick, here it is again. And you just feel like you just get pulled, you get pummeled again, or you get irritated about it again. So I think that's enough to set the stage. What do you think? Okay, you guys good with that? All right, so just take a stretch and let's just take a breath. And inhale. and an exhale. And let's dedicate this series to you, revealing a pattern that's ready for it to release its grip on you so that you can elevate and expand into whatever it is that is calling you forward. We are at a time on the planet when, if you've listened to and seen the model that I created called the model of transformation, there's 3 things that are happening for all of us right now. You're healing the past, you're stabilizing in the now, and you're creating the new. So to do that, you have to break apart and break through patterns that have been part of your learning curriculum on this planet. We all get it. We all have them. No shame, no blame. Difference is, what are you going to do with it? That's why we call it Feminine Power Time here, you all. And so just opening up, saying, yes, okay, like show me, like I want to see the patterns that are ready for transformation, for breakthrough, for what's called transmutation, which is changing the frequency of something. So we're looking for the patterns that are really rooted in shadow and rooted in sabotage, rooted in self-sacrifice, rooted in self-limiting, keep your light small because, oh my goodness, the Matrix would love that. If we're all in our most radiant selves, mind, body, heart, spirit, the world changes and shifts and elevates tomorrow. So what if in these next couple months, the most important thing you could do is to make sure that that light in you is sustained and healthy and has the spaces to express. And this is how we do it, by finding those patterns. Okay, so 3 places to look. Number 1, where are you overgiving and under receiving? Where are you overgiving and under receiving? 2, what's a cycle that keeps repeating? So no matter what you do, it just keeps coming back and it keeps coming back. And maybe it gets better for a little bit, but then it still comes back and you just can't seem to break yourself out of that cycle. 3, there's common types of people that continue to show up, or common kinds of situations that show up. And that's another place that we want to look. So I'm going to go deeper into each of these 3. And as I do, I'm going to invite you to consider how these might show up in your life currently. I'll give you a couple examples for each of them as well. And then really do consider joining us for the Burnout to Balance practice. It's just such a great container, a 40-day container to really support you. And you can find out more about that at burnouttobalancepractice.com. And I'll say that again at the end, but just wanted to mention that here before we dive deeper, you all. Okay, let's do it. Okay, where are you overgiving and under receiving? Let's see what patterns might be here. So this can show up in your money. It can show up in your energy. Money and energy are super connected. Podcast for another time. Life force, our life force, and our bank account. And I'll give you a couple examples here. So I have a friend who's a therapist, and this is regarding money. And she just never seems to have enough. She has 25 clients that she has to see a week. She works within the healthcare system, is a big part of where she gets her clients from. And she's top notch. She's amazing. But it's like, can you imagine 25 clients every week? And she's still like, I don't have enough. I barely have enough. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And so there's multiple patterns that are going on here for her, but this one about money, and you can kind of look at it, is like, where do you feel like, where's the pattern where you are giving more value than you're receiving in money, or you're giving more of your life away even that's in alignment to the amount of money. So I have other clients who, make tons and tons and tons of money, but what they've had to give and that to like sacrifice for what they're not getting in their personal life. So they have all of the money, but they don't have the relationships. They don't have the family connections. They don't have the personal things that they want. And so that's still an over giving and under receiving. You wouldn't think it because you're like, but I have all this money. I'm like, yeah, but it's not, you're still imbalanced. So if you look at money, what might be the pattern that's showing up? Because then we can kind of get into the imprint. So for you, is it money? Or it can show up in relationship and energy too. And this is where it's just like what I would say with the chasing, right? Like you're chasing somebody or you're pouring energy into a relationship. And and it's not coming back. It's not coming back to you in the same way. So it could be in a friendship where you're the one who's always reaching out and you're always reaching out and they don't reach back. Underneath that, there's a reason, there's a pattern and an imprint that's keeping you stuck in relationships in which you overgive and you underreceive. It could also happen at work. So it could happen where I have had a couple clients who are amazing, amazing women, and they work, one in tech, one in healthcare, I'm thinking. So they're working in pretty male-dominated systems, another in academia. And they're always trying to get a sit at the table. They're always trying to get the men to actually listen to what they have to say. And they're usually like general counsels, or they are doctors, or they're working in the people side of the business. And they're just discounted and dismissed. And they just pour so much energy because they have so much care for their organization and for the people. But they're giving all of this energy to a system that, while the people might want it, the leadership team doesn't want it, or at least not enough on the leadership in the ethos of what the company is really about. And so looking at your work in the organizations, this might not be happening now for you, but it might be happened in the past, where you're just pouring in and it's not coming back. And in this situation with these women, there's deeper patterns under there. So the pattern for one of them was trying to get validated. She wanted to be validated. She wanted to be validated by the men, but she kept choosing men, whether it was at work or who she was married to, that couldn't validate her and wouldn't validate and value her. Or another one who was kind of working out, what we figured out was she was working out her distorted masculine things because she was dismissed and discounted a lot. And instead of working out in her dating life, she was working out this pattern of being dismissed and being dismissed again and again and again in her life within the hospital systems that she would work within. And then what was really powerful about that is when you can name it, instead of it being like, well, why won't they listen to me? And why is this guy a jerk? Or why do I reach out to my friend and they're not reaching back? You ask the question, why am I pushing here? Why am I pushing? Why are you overgiving and under-receiving your time, your energy? And whether that's meaning or money or value that's not coming back, what underneath that is driving you? And of course, we know these things are tied to earlier imprints in our life, but it's not just like, oh, my mommy was mean to me and my daddy was, this, and we've all had trauma. So I don't mean to discount that, because that's for sure needs to be healed and dealt with. I'm talking about the pattern that's even underneath that it's that, whether that experience either imprinted in you, or maybe you even came in with the imprint. The imprint was so early and it just kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And so this imprint of, like for me, it will show up in with certain friendships. I have a type of woman so this kind of goes to the second one, well, really the third one, common types of people. So I'm going to jump ahead to common types of people for a moment. A woman, a friend type, Noah kind of jokes. She's like, you have a type when it comes to women, and they're intense and they're smart and they're brilliant and they're busy. This is in my personal life. And so they can meet me and we have these great intense conversations and connections, but they're so busy that their whole life is just full. They do windows. Like, oh, I have a window here. I have a window here. And they refuse to create any kind of consistent connection. They're just so busy. They're almost like, I call them, they're in their own ecosystem. And if you're not in their ecosystem, you're just, until they think about you. And then I get these texts like, oh, I miss you. And I'm like, you don't need to miss me. I'm like, I'm right here. And it's like, wow, what in me, and that causes me to chase. And then it creates this wound. So it's connected to the imprint of not being received. So I have this imprint. It's one of my original shadow wounds of not being received by the feminine, which is why I teach the feminine. And it's part of what's brought me my light. So this isn't like, oh, this bad things happened to me and therefore, something's wrong with me. It's like these things happen to all of us. And it's part of the curriculum. But I learned a lot. Like I sought out the feminine because of that wound that happened very early, like right after the third trimester for me, that created this imprint of not being received or having like that kind of hole of loneliness. And then I end up chasing these people, these women, and it aligns with my Enneagram type and all the types. So we can look at all the different, whether it's human design or astrology or Enneagram, they're all just ways to help us understand these primary woundings that are connected to the primary imprints that happen. And so when I was able to see that, I'm like, you know what? I'm not chasing anymore. But there's a deeper, the deeper fear within me, the deeper imprint is, I'm all alone. So I got to be with that, right? And can I be with my aloneness? And that's the powerful part. Like like I was saying, there's no accident that I'm here over the weekend and Noah's not here, but I'm not alone. This is where the spirit connection comes in. Like I'm connected to spirit. I'm connected to the divine. I'm connected through my practice. And if I don't feel that, then how can I even teach the feminine? How can I live the feminine? How can I embody the feminine? It's not an idea. It's not a psychological aspect. It's not a quality. It's the nature of our being. So in many ways, whatever imprints are running you, like in this particular, like for me, the distortion of the overgiving in relationship, or even, under receiving financially in different ways, in different programs that I've run. And I've just watched myself do this. I was like, well, I could do this in May because I know there's a real need out there for it. And I designed this whole thing and I'm like, why am I going to do that? Like my energy's going in a different direction right now. And I've spent 15 years dedicated to self-love and serving in these different ways. And that's not where I'm being called right now. So because I've seen this imprint of struggle and ease, and I know I have this overgiving, and when I really have a deep care in me, there's the imprint. Is that going to create struggle or is that going to create ease? It's going to create struggle. So I said to the divine, like basically like, look, if you want this wisdom to get to people, you need to show me a way where there's ease, where I'm being invited, where people are asking for it versus me making it happen. So this is how, like, kind of looking at other places where you're making things happen. That's another way we end up overgiving and under receiving because we're using our own will to make it happen, or we're trying to connect with the people that just, it's not personal. They're just not the right frequency at this time. So start to notice that. This is kind of a lot. So let's just take a moment and just let that land. But Christina's saying, like, let's look under here in some of these overgiving and under receiving, where we're struggling, begging, trying to prove, seeking value from the outside, afraid to be alone, scared that we're going to be left alone. Looking at the people in your life, well, what are the common kinds of people that are showing up in your sphere? And this could be professionally or personally. So I just shared this part about these very intense women. What I learned is that there's a pattern in there around chasing. I chase and then they feel adored. And then I get rewounded. And so I release chasing, like I'm just not doing it. And I'm also not holding the space open, wishing that, they're going to reach out. I've replaced that with, like, I'm focusing on the receptive ones. And the people who really want to be in relationship, and relationship matters to them. And not from a place of being mean or mad about it, just like, yeah, this is a shift. And if I feel inspired to reach out, I will. But I'm going to focus on the people who actually really care about relationship, because that's what matters to me as relationship. And if I keep chasing the ones who aren't available, well, how is that going to support me to elevate when what I need in my life is to actually have more connection? So start to just look around as we're looking for your patterns and your imprints. We keep saying, show me, right? Show me where the pattern or the imprint is that's keeping me stuck in the shadow frequency versus the gift frequency, keeping me stuck in self-sabotage or self-sacrifice, keeping me limited. And look around your personal life. Is there a type of person And or it could show up professionally for who you work for. Like I was mentioning with the woman that I was mentioning who was working, she was always working, the person she reported to was always a dismissive male doctor. Now she works in a new environment that is a inclusive female doctor who runs the department, and people are listening to what she has to offer. They're not dismissing her. They don't totally get it all, but they're not dismissing her. And that's because she transmuted things on the inside to be able to create that for herself, and is a work in progress. You can also look around. Sometimes I've noticed this. I was just talking with a executive client where she had someone sent her an email that was not a lovely email to receive. It was basically like, you're doing this to me. It was a very it was not someone on her team, but it was someone from the outside that they had invited in to participate into something, and in projecting. It's an imprint of projecting. And so in the 7 months or 8 months I've been working with her, there's been several instances, either people on her own team or people that she's met during different trainings, or people that are, being brought in from the outside, where they project their own wounding onto her. And so when she told me about the situation and we were kind of unpacking it, and she's asking me, how to respond, I said, well, let me just ask you this question. Why does this same kind of person keep showing up in your life? And she's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, this is the similar piece. And so what is it within you that's causing and creating that situation or allowing it to continue? So we talked about that. And so that's where for yourself, just starting, like, remember, we have a couple podcasts here together. And then for those of you that are going to join us for Burnout to Balance, we'll have a whole 40 days together. So this is more like just about awareness. Know what to do with it. I want you to be thinking about this and seeing it. Might even be married to the people, I'm just saying, or even your parents, right? I see this with people who have had narcissistic parents or partners, and they might either go worse or they maybe get a little bit better, but it's still the same self-absorbed narcissistic patterning. And so it's okay to look at your family system. Don't be, don't. And you can also, look around too, as we're looking at the shadow and the patterns here. What are some of the patterns that are good? This isn't just about the shadow part, but I want you to get there. But usually, in order for us to release the shadow, what has to happen is we have to feel the presence of something else. And we'll get there next week when we talk about what we need to do to break through. So like, for one of the reasons I could release this chasing thing with strong female friends is because I have other friends who really do lean in to relationship. And they're strong and bright and amazing and powerful. And my friend Shasta, we've met every month for, I think we're going on 9 or 10 years. My friend Cheryl and I have Wise Woman Tea at least every 6 weeks, and usually like 2 or 3 hours. And I could just feel both of their, like, they're really like, they're rooting for me, like they're there for me. They see me in my weakness. They see me in my strength. And Cheryl once used this word called accompanied. And she's like, and I love that word. And I feel like they're accompanying me. And not everybody needs to be that level of friendship. That's a different connection. That's a different topic that we talk about when we talk about relationship rings. But we all need at least a handful. I think 6 is a good number. If you can have had at least 6 women that are really accompanying you, I just feel like, or even 6 individuals, and then, in there also communities that you feel accompanied by. Wow. Like that's power, right? But we have to look at these relational patterns that are not serving us anymore. And that's kind of the last one, because else we can't make room for the new. The last one is to take a look at what are the cycles that keep repeating in your life. I called this, when I was writing Choosing Me Before We, I saw this first in relationships. It's called the blip effect. So in relationship, it's like, oh, this is hard. Oh, this is hard. This isn't working. This isn't working. But then something happened. It's like, oh, they showed up. Oh, they texted me. Oh, they gave me a Valentine's Day card. Oh, they took the garbage out or whatever. But then the shit goes back to normal. And then you're let down even more. Or, I have a friend who keeps saying that she's going to show up, and she doesn't show up. And she doesn't make the changes in her life to be able to show up. And it causes the blip effect is one of the most harmful things on our psyches and our hearts, because we just keep getting let down. We're like, oh, it's going to change. It's going to get better. And this is why when I wrote Choosing Me Before We, one of the pieces of wisdom around relationship that's still true is don't date, marry, get into business partnership with, choose where you put people into your friendship and relationship rings based on potential. People show you who they are. Believe it. So where in a professional or personal relationship might you be experiencing that blip effect? And the cycle keeps repeating. And what keeps you hoping for that? What's the imprint within you? What's the fear within you? What's driving you to not be honest and not be real? That's what we'll get into the breakthrough next week. This also can show up in just work and overall life. So you wanna look at, where is it hard? Where are things just continually hard? And no matter how hard you try, it doesn't really shift. It just gets a little better. And things aren't meant to be gruelingly hard in that place of struggle and strife and striving in a way that is distressing to our nervous system. This is why in yoga we learn the difference between distress that harms you and stress that actually supports you. So I want you to look at, where is it just hard? And this is so powerful. It's like when you can get to the imprint underneath this, where you look around at your work life and your career, or even how you're living, where you're just like, I'm going to make it work. Oh my God, as soon as you say that, I'm going to make it work, there's a sign, ding, 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 probably a pattern going on underneath there. So really looking at where is that at, and why I'm just kind of keeping this all broad for you all. I want you to go into your life and start to look around, because the thing is, the first part in shifting and breaking through something is you have to see it and then gain language for it, which is why we have to create these containers. I mean, one of the ways we do a breakthrough, it takes 40 days to break a pattern or an imprint. It takes 120 days to start to reroute something else. And then they say 1,000 days to make it who you are. Now, don't be like, oh my God, that's way too long. I can't wait that long. It's all about what in Taoism they call incremental progress. And easeful is right. And easeful doesn't mean you don't need perseverance. It means you need perseverance, purposeful patience, and devotion and commitment and play and lightness in this, right? We're not doing this just because it's hard work. I'm inviting you into this from a place of delight and play and light of this is your life, dear ones, right? And these patterns are in us because we came into this crazy world and we got them from our family systems and the overculture systems and society systems and education systems. And we knew it at some level, at a soul level, if you want to tell that story. I mean, I think it's a good story. You drop in, you're like, okay, this is what I said I signed up for, and I'm going to be human and I'm going to work through this. And then I'm going to remember who I am, and I'm going to see these patterns and imprints, or what my friend Mary and I like to call holograms, that I'm stuck in, that I just can't get out of. And then I'm going to find other people and communities to help me break through them. And then once you can name them, you can start to actually work with them. And there are patterns I've been working for 3 years. I have one as an entrepreneur. I call it the gain and drain cycle. It's one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur, is to create consistent flow to your revenue. And I've worked on this for 17 years, obviously in some way. But whenever I make a transition from one path in my career to another, there's always a wobble in the field, because I'm also expanding my value, and my way in money is just energy. So there's always a bobble. And I've been working that pattern of gain, drain, gain. And it's very common in the entrepreneur world. And I have lots of things I've done to create consistency and flow and all of that, and things that were also out of my control, like COVID and a partner having a stroke, many things, right? There's all kinds of things that happen. But I know it's part of my path to actually figure out how to break free of that pattern, not judge myself for that pattern, and then find a different way to do things in which I'm not sacrificing my soul to have the material things I need. And I'm not also in the same way just, not having the material things I need. And that's the do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact imprint pattern that I and all the leadership councils, and I hope you too, are working on and with. We're putting that as the new imprint. Like imagine that. Imagine a culture in which do less, receive more, achieve a greater impact, in which we could have comfort and variety, in which the work we did had both meaning and material resources, in which our soul was fed and our mind was stimulated. Like these are the realities, you all, that we're putting into place. This is why this is reimagining the way we in the world work. This isn't just some self-absorbed conversation. This is about us embracing our power, you embracing your power to ferret out, to look, to illuminate those patterns and imprints that are just like, pull me out. I'm ready. You don't need me anymore. I've served the purpose, and then we're going to work with it. And then let's work with it. So we'll come back next week and we'll talk about how do you break through these. And then we'll come back the following week and we'll talk about how we are, what are some of the common patterns. And then that will be the end of season 8, which is very exciting. And I have some things to share about what's coming for this summer that are going to be very much about me shifting from struggle to ease, to make space for the new while I'm stabilizing in the now, and also healing the past, because struggle has been part of my imprinting. And so releasing that is healing. So just thinking about that for yourself as we move forward from here. Okay, what am I healing and releasing while I'm stabilizing? And what do I need to stabilize in the now while I'm creating the new? And why does this matter to you to look at these? What is it that you're creating in your career, in your life, in your well-being, in your relationships? And just feel and allow that light to come in and touch you. It's here. And every day we choose to alchemize and transform these patterns and imprints that are at a denser shadow frequency, not make ourselves bad for them showing up, but see them and just love them and light them and transform them. We become more radiant. And what more can we do on this planet but do that, to bring more light to the world? Because then you know what happens? You start to see things in your life. You start to see the patterns open, the possibilities open, the relationships show up in a way that can't happen when we're at a denser frequency. So that is the name of the game, you all. Let's use the Passovers and the equinoxes and the eclipses. And whenever you're listening to this, it's all good. There's never a time when we don't want to be elevating our patterns, but just this is always a good time of the year to do so. So remember, join us for Burnout to Balance. So you could be held in a structure for 40 days where we do get deep into one of the overgiving and under-receiving patterns, and then really strengthen our practices to support us, body, mind, heart, and spirit. So that is burnouttobalancepractice.com. Been doing this practice in different ways since 2013, and every year I leave with a golden nugget. So come, and it would be great to have you. You do it right from home, and we have live sessions as well. And then my request is for you to share this podcast. Please, share the show, share the podcast. It's been interesting, Feminine Power Time. She just kind of stays right at the same level of downloads every month. She doesn't have big ups and downs, and I'm good with that. Like I'm okay with maintaining if this is the number it's meant to be. That's also, part of doing things in the feminine, and I'm really committed to you all being connected with other people who you can have these conversations with, and for this being a healthy place to continue to grow from. So the way we do that in the feminine is through connection. So that is my ask to you, to share this episode with one other person and then talk about some of the patterns that you're seeing. And then we'll be back next week. Okay. Much love, everyone.